Welcome. You are listening to Aftersight. This recording is intended solely for individuals who are blind or have low vision.
Hello, thank you for joining us for the Colorado Sun, read by Liz. This is being recorded on Friday, September 13th. Today, we will be reading the following main articles. Canada promises Colorado 15 gray wolves for next wave of reintroduction by Jason Blevins. Broomfield police identify man who allegedly killed woman during active shooter situation at apartment complex by Jesse Paul. And AI is growing fast. Here's how Colorado is trying to keep up by Tamara Chang. And we'll be following up with a few miscellaneous articles. In outdoors news, Canada promises Colorado 15 gray wolves for the next wave of reintroduction. Colorado parks and wildlife officials and wolf advocates cheer the promise of wolves from British Columbia that will be released on the western slope this winter, by Jason Blevins. A second wave of wolves released in Colorado this winter will hail from Canada. Colorado Parks and Wildlife on Friday announced it had reached a deal with the British Columbia Ministry of Water, Lands and Resource Stewardship to source as many as 15 wolves for reintroduction in Colorado from December to March next year. Quote, their willingness and ability to work with another jurisdiction to support our conservation priorities, as they have in past translocation efforts, demonstrates their long-shared commitment to seeing this species succeed, end quote, Colorado Parks and Wildlife Director Jeff Davis said of the BC Ministry in an email statement. The Colorado plan for reintroducing gray wolves into the western slope calls for releasing as many as 15 wolves a year for 3 to 5 years. Last year, Colorado Parks and Wildlife released 10 wolves captured in Oregon on state land in Grand and Summit counties. Mostly urban voters along the Front Range narrowly passed the wolf reintroduction plan in November 2020. Colorado Parks and Wildlife spent 3 years crafting a reintroduction plan. 3 of those 10 Oregon wolves have died, including an adult male that was part of a 6-wolf Grand County pack. 2 adults and 4 pups relocated by the state wildlife officials after killing livestock. A collar on a male wolf from Oregon sent a, quote, mortality signal, end quote, Monday this week. A mountain lion is suspected in the death of another relocated wolf in Larimer County in May. Colorado Parks and Wildlife biologists will begin working with their British Columbia colleagues this winter to capture and transport wolves. The wolves, like those captured last year in Oregon, will be tested and treated for disease, collared and released in Colorado soon after they arrive in the state. Injured wolves, or wolves involved in livestock depredation, will not be relocated in Colorado, officials said in a statement. Eric Odell, the Wolf Conservation Program Manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, said in a statement that state wildlife managers, quote, learned a great deal, end quote, from the capture and transport of the Oregon wolves last year, and his team, quote, will apply those lessons this year, end quote. Quote, Gray wolves from the Canadian Rockies were used for reintroduction into Idaho and Yellowstone, end quote, O'Dell said. Quote, there are no biological differences between wolves in British Columbia and the wolves released in Colorado last year, and the new source population will provide additional genetic diversity to our state's small but growing wolf population, end quote. In June, a Native American tribe in Washington rescinded its offer to provide Colorado with 15 wolves, saying the state has not addressed concerns raised by the Southern Ute tribe involving wolf reintroduction. Wolf advocates cheered the decision to use Canadian wolves for the reintroduction effort. Quote, with more paws on the ground this winter, we'll be closer to reestablishing a flourishing population of wolves, righting the historical wrong of their extermination from our state, and fulfilling the will of the voters who supported this restoration, end quote, said Allie Henderson, Southern Rockies director at the Center for Biological Diversity, in an email. By Jason Blevins. In news of crime and the courts, Broomfield police identify man who allegedly killed woman during active shooter situation at apartment complex. Gregory Ryan Miles is suspected of first-degree murder and other charges in the shooting at the Arista Flats apartments. By Jesse Paul. Broomfield police on Friday identified the 34-year-old man who they say killed a woman during an active shooter situation at an apartment complex a day earlier. Gregory Ryan Miles is suspected of first-degree murder and other charges in the shooting Thursday at the Arista Flat Apartments. Miles was shot multiple times by law enforcement during a roughly 4-hour standoff. Police said Friday he had been stabilized at a hospital after being seriously wounded. Quote, no additional information can be released at this time due to the complexity of the investigation, end quote, police said in a news release. The name of the woman Miles allegedly killed has not been released. Police said she was in an apartment with him during the standoff. By Jesse Paul. In technology news, AI is growing fast. Here's how Colorado is trying to keep up. The state and city of Denver takes a cautious approach to generative AI as local innovators develop impressive tech. By Tamara Chang. Louisville-based AMP, previously known as AMP Robotics, has developed a lot of AI technology in the past decade to help it sort trash and recycled materials. Its AI vision systems have identified more than 150 billion items. The system recognizes different colors, textures, shapes, sizes, and patterns to identify material characteristics, much in the same way a person does. At some point over the summer, Sunny got a little bit smarter. Sunny is the artificially intelligent chat box the city of Denver rolled out last spring and wasn't roving the Denver interwebs or trolling neighborhood social networks. The genderless bot was just getting faster at what it was designed to do, mainly by remembering what it had already done. Quote, it's simpler for Sunny to come back quickly with a response if it's already gone through the workflow, end quote, said Suma Nalapati, the city's chief information officer, who's in charge of making sure the tech works for city employees and residents. Quote, for example, asking what is my trash pickup day for the week, for this street? If it knows the address and it knows the pickup day, it's easier for it to answer that question the next time around, end quote. Baby steps, really. Sonny's still in a crib to prevent it from escaping into the experimental world of generative AI, the game-changing tech popularized by OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 that has machines creating new content. Sonny spent a year in training before a public debut last April, and after the city's own generative AI use policy was drafted, vetted, and approved. Humans are still involved in feeding Sonny to make sure its responses are appropriate, accurate, and not, as they say in the AI biz, hallucinations. Top-ranked restaurants, which a local magazine asked Sonny about a few months ago, was excised from Sonny's memory since the city isn't in the business of specific restaurant promotion. In the past 6 months, Sonny has handled 20 to 30% of calls and texts to the city's 311 information service, which eases the workload of the human operators. In a world where AI is developing so fast, Denver is trying to carefully establish itself as a city that welcomes innovation to solve problems, but also considers its unintended consequences. It's even organized next week Den AI Summit, touted as the nation's first city-led conference on the topic. That's in line with the state where potential privacy, prejudice, and piracy issues of AI-led lawmakers to pass a law in May curbing some AI development. Colorado was the first in the country with such a law, though challenges from the tech industry will likely result in revisions. The governor's office released its Gen AI policy last month, which impacts all state agencies, said Amy Bika, Chief Data Officer for the Governor's Office of Information Technology. Anything with a generative AI component must pass OIT guidelines. Gen AI can't be used to make decisions, quote, materially impacting individual or entities, end quote. In other words, vetting applicants for state benefits or funding, or an adverse action, like an arrest or detention, must rely on human decision makers. OIT is also trying to figure out how tech like ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, or Microsoft Copilot can help employees in their jobs and assist residents with state services. Quote, we have a whole innovation piece that we're setting up. End quote, Bika said. Quote, we're doing a trial right now with Google Gemini. We have 150 people across all agencies using it and giving us feedback every week. And then we're looking to potentially set up a lab in the future, end quote. A lab would allow staff to test out available AI tools like Grammarly and Read Period AI to quickly provide summaries and transcripts of meetings. So far, none of the experiments have the potential to be public-facing, but check back in a month, she said. The speed of AI. AI and tech companies have been around for years in Colorado, with an ecosystem that includes machines that take fast food orders, algorithms combating sepsis in hospital, and robots that sort recycling. Many consumers may not realize they've already experiencing it, be it with transcribing meetings, getting help from customer service, or searching on Google. But for some young startups in the Gen AI space, growth has been lightning fast. Take Adil Khan, for example. 2 years ago, the Denver resident was on a break after more than a decade of teaching and working as a school administrator, including as the founding principal of Conservatory Green High School in Denver. He wasn't thinking of starting a company. Then ChatGPT-4 launched. Quote, I started trying to use it for things I would be doing as a teacher and principal, and I found a lot of utility and wondered if educators were using it, end quote, Khan said. Quote, I had no idea for a software company, but I did what a principal would do, which is I went to my old school and I trained teachers on how to use ChatGPT, and in those sessions their jaws were on the floor, end quote. He'd follow up weeks later only to find the teachers had stopped using it. They didn't have time. They forgot what to do. They never figured out how to ask good prompts to achieve better responses. So Khan started Magic School in March 2023 as a digital helper. The service can quickly make a first attempt to generate lesson plans, create math problems, or write letters to parents in the same way a teacher's assistants would. Magic School raised $2.4 million from local investors last year and went on to add $15 million more in venture capital in July. Khan now leads the 40-person company from his Denver living room. This week, it reached 3 million viewers. Quote, I think of AI as this really incredible opportunity to help educators and to assist them in their work, fight teacher burnout, help them be more efficient, and also maybe augment and quickly refresh their knowledge on a subject they haven't taught before, end quote, Khan said. Quote, the second part is the student tool. We need to prepare students for a future where AI is everywhere. Next month, Apple will implement AI features in the iPhone. They've already in Android phones. If we're not teaching kids how to use AI in school responsibly, then we're just leaving them to their own devices, end quote. But there are definitely lines Magic School won't cross. Grades. Quote, we've made a lot of intentional decisions around this, end quote, Khan said. Quote, one thing we've intentionally left out is giving a grade. The grade is a high-stake decision that could impact a child's future. The educator is still the center and decider, end quote. Past investments, future innovations. Venture capital has been paying a lot of attention to AI companies, which scooped up 41% of all U.S. VC investments in the first half of the year, according to PitchBook, a market research firm that tracks venture deals. AI's outsized attention from venture capital. Venture capital investments in AI and machine learning tech startups were pulled out as a separate category in 2017 by PitchBook, a market research firm that tracks venture funding. When Denver-based Range Ventures invested in Magic School in August 2023, the VC consensus was to avoid applications because larger AI companies like OpenAI or Google could build their own competitive service, said Adam Burrows, the managing director at the firm. But there was something magical about Khan's startup that made it a better prospect than a customer service startup others were chasing, Burrows said. Quote, we looked at the K to 12 space and we said, hey, there's actually no incumbent here. AI is allowing something to be built for teachers that has never been built before, end quote, he said. Quote, our view was that AI was actually enabling an entire type of software that didn't exist before. So we have been bullish on looking for more situations like that. Range Ventures focuses on front-range companies and continues to invest in young AI startups, most recently HappyDoc, a note-taking administrative assistant for veterinarians. AI isn't new to Range Ventures, though. It invested about a decade ago in AMP, the robotics and automation company in Louisville that uses AI to sort recycling. AMP has come a long way from its one-armed robot named Clark, which used optical sensors, machine learning, and AI to pick milk cartons out of a pile of moving recyclables. The company, which has since raised more than $170 million from investors, now builds entire systems to sort recyclable materials from plain old trash without the touch of a human hand. Quote, what we've done with AI is created what we think of as a universal garbage sensor, end quote, said Matanya Horowitz, AMP's founder and CEO. Quote, but rather than a robot that picks out aluminum cans, we think of the whole facility as a robot, like a 1,000-ton robot. It's awesome, end quote. Years of training and scanning 150 billion items has helped AMP's technology understand the difference between various types of plastics, metals, and other recyclables versus actual trash like chicken bones, diapers, and, quote, all the nasties, end quote, he said. Its machines have even been trained to distinguish Starbucks cups, parentheses, quote, we wanted to show that we had no issue getting down to the brand or packing level, end quote, he said. The AMP1 systems are up and running in trash and recycling plants around the country, including at a municipal solid waste facility in Portsmouth, Virginia. Like an Amazon warehouse where robots do most of the running around, there are few employees on the floor of an AMP-powered facility. There are still some humans, though. AMP calls them data annotators who can correct the machines and teach them the differences between a Starbucks cup and an unbranded coffee cup, for example. Everything is just so much faster. Quote, the system can highlight things it's uncertain about, giving more leverage to our data annotators, end quote, he said. Quote, it'll say, not sure about these? Will you help me discriminate them? The person goes through and makes those corrections, and what we're finding is intelligent prioritization of the work can make human annotators 100 times more effective, end quote. While generative AI isn't widespread on the floor, AMP engineers use it to code faster. Quote, AI tools are so powerful, I've seen it firsthand. The productivity out of developers is unreal, end quote, he said. Quote, society will advance so much quicker because software development is about to become somewhere between 10 to 1,000 times more efficient. I think people want to be really thoughtful so that they don't slow down the progress and put us at a disadvantage. End quote. Nala Pati, Denver's CIO, said that's part of the purpose behind the city's all-day DEN AI Summit. Quote, The cognitive revolution is here, and it's again characterized by the automation of the cognitive process, end quote, she said. Quote, and we want Denver to build inclusive communities, and we want to make sure that ethical considerations and responsible AI practices are helping us address the vast impact on societal problems. We want to take advantage of every resource we have to solve the hard, complex problems we have, end quote. By Tamara Chan. In the news of the environment, gasoline company suddenly withdraws expansion plan for tanks across from Commerce City Elementary School. Proposal drew fierce opposition to new air pollution. ONE-OK blames customer decision. Quote, tanks are no longer necessary, end quote, by Michael Booth. A gasoline distributor late Thursday canceled its unpopular proposal for a major tank farm expansion across from a Commerce City Elementary School in a neighborhood heavily impacted by air pollution, blaming a customer backing out of a contract. Magellan Pipeline Company's hotly controversial expansion near DuPont Elementary had galvanized neighbors, environmental and community activists, and local officials in opposition to the permit application, which has now been withdrawn from further consideration by the State Health Department's Air Pollution Control Division. Magellan, now a subsidy of ONE-OK, had said it wanted more tanks for storing and distributing reformulated gasoline, which emits fewer ozone-causing pollutions, and was required by the EPA at Northern Front Range gas stations this summer as one effort to bring Colorado under strict federal caps for the toxic gas. Suncor, Colorado's only petroleum refinery and another major source of pollution for Commerce City and Adams County, is the dominant provider of reformulated gasoline. Petroleum trade officials said Magellan's contribution to reformulated gas in 2024 helped competition and lowered consumer prices for the fuel. Magellan, quote, has withdrawn its air permit application for the proposed 5-tank expansion at the company's DuPont, Colorado location. The proposed tanks are no longer necessary based on the customer's decision to back out of the commercial contract, end quote, read a statement emailed to media outlets for ONE-OK spokesman Anel Morrow. The statement said the company, quote, will continue to meet customer needs through Magellan's existing valuable infrastructure in the area and looks forward to working with stakeholders, end quote. Opponents of the expansion celebrated the withdrawal and gave credit to their movement to pack public meetings and state health comment sessions with arguments that heavily minority and lower-income neighborhoods have already suffered far too much from toxic emissions. They announced a press conference and victory party for Friday afternoon. The decision highlights, quote, the power of the community unifying and advocating in protecting the health and safety of Commerce City families, end quote, said an announcement from Cultivando spokesperson Guadalupe Solis, who has helped lead the opposition. The Magellan Pipeline Terminal across from DuPont Elementary has 20 storage tanks. The expansion proposed an additional 5 tanks. Petroleum handling facilities release volatile organic compounds, including benzene and other hazardous chemicals, into surrounding neighborhoods, and adding a significant number of tanks, pipes, and valves will increase emissions, according to permit applications. Concerns expressed in public forums and permit comments focus particularly on benzene, which can cause cancer and low birth weights. Cultivando said the area around DuPont Elementary has consistently higher levels of benzene, even for Commerce City. Colorado officials faced various dilemmas in reviewing the permit for the terminal expansion. The tanks would have held more reformulated gasoline than the site could handle for the 2024 season, and thereby meet other environmental goals of the Polis administration. Colorado's northern Front Range counties must use the less volatile gasoline in summer to help bring the state's ozone-causing emissions in line with EPA limits. Reformulated gas, according to the EPA, can cut back on ozone-causing emissions because it's denser and doesn't evaporate as quickly in hot weather. The Polis administration warned earlier this year consumers could pay up to 50 cents more a gallon for reformulated gasoline because the market is dominated by Suncor's Commerce City refinery. But petroleum trade officials and even the EPA said companies like Magellan did a good job increasing competition this spring by piping in alternative supplies ahead of the June 1st launch of reformulated gasoline. Magellan's early action to pipe in reformulated gas last spring saved Front Range residents, including those in Adams County, 15 to 20 cents a gallon by boosting competitive pricing, officials of the Colorado-Wyoming Petroleum Marketers Association said this week. Still, they added, gasoline companies are aware that 9 out of 10 gallons of Front Range gas is delivered from Adams County facilities like Magellan and Suncor. Developers need to help, quote, take care of that community, end quote, the trade group said. By Michael Booth. In water news, promises were broken on state-funded Rio Dam project, river advocates say. Despite public commitment to improve the river as part of a $30 million dam safety project completed in 2020, Trout Unlimited and others say taxpayers are not getting what they thought they paid for, though state says all legal requirements have been met. By Gerd Smith. 4 years after a high-profile dam restoration project was completed in the scenic headwaters of the Rio Grande, promises to deliver water for fishing during the winter and other recreational benefits have not been met, environmental groups charge. The Rio Grande Reservoir project was funded by state loans and public grants provided by the Colorado Water Conservation Board, which often bases financing approvals in part on a project's ability to serve multiple purposes, including water for fish, habitat, and kayakers. Quote, the Colorado Water Conservation Board provided $30 million in the forms of loans and grants to complete the project, end quote, the CWCB said in a project update posted on its website. Quote, benefits include in-stream flow enhancement, channel maintenance, outdoor recreation opportunities, terrestrial and aquatic wildlife habitat, irrigation, augmentation, and storage to comply with the Rio Grande Compact between Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. The public-private project was completed in 2020. The CWCB declined an interview request for this story, but said in an email that there were no specific conditions in the loans and grants tied to providing environmental benefits. Quote, CWCB does not have the ability to impose extra terms on the recipients of funds that are not articulated in the funding agreements. In the case of the Rio Grande Reservoir rehabilitation, the final deliverable was completion of the project, end quote, a spokesperson said. Still, Kevin Terry, Southwest Program Director for Trout Unlimited, said the project would likely never have been funded without assurances that the dam would be operated differently to help the river, including releasing water in the winter to aid the fish and changing the time water is released throughout the summer to keep the river cooler and healthier during prime fishing and kayaking season. Quote, there were lots of environmental benefits touted before the Colorado Water Conservation Board and the Roundtable, end quote, Terry said, referring to the Rio Grande Basin Roundtable. The Roundtable is one of 9 public groups across the state's major river basins that help address local water issues and funnel state grants to projects they approve. The San Luis Valley Irrigation District, which owns and operates the dam, serves farms around Center and has delivered water from the dam since 1912, according to its website. Neither District President Randall Palmgren nor Superintendent Robert Phillips responded to numerous requests for comments. The district uses the reservoir to store water for irrigators. Trout Unlimited and others aren't asking for any water, they say, just that existing water that would be released anyway be sent downstream at times that are beneficial to the river. Among key complaints by environmentalists is that the irrigation company is not allowing water to flow out of the rehabilitated dam during the winter, something that would benefit young fish and allow them to grow larger for the next fishing season. Terry said the irrigation district has said it can't deliver that winter water because it is difficult to operate the new equipment in freezing winter weather. But Terry said he doesn't understand how the project could have been built without the ability to deliver in cold weather, something that occurs routinely in other reservoirs in the valley. Jim Loud, a Creede resident and avid angler who lives on the river, said he and others are tired of waiting for the river to receive the benefits many would believe would have been delivered by now. Quote, all we want is to get them to do what they said they were going to do, end quote, said Loud, citing numerous CWCB documents dating back several years outlining the environmental benefits of the project. Loud is part of the Committee for a Healthy Rio Grande. The old days weren't fun. The conflict comes as the Rio Grande Basin, which begins high above Creede and flows south to the Gulf of Mexico, continues to struggle with declining aquifer levels due to heavy agricultural use and low stream flows due to drought and climate change. In Colorado, the Rio Grande waters a potato industry that is one of the largest in the nation. Creede local Dale Peisel, who owns a farm on the river and caters to the fishing community, said river conditions have improved some since the dam was rebuilt. Prior to the project, the irrigation company would routinely dry up the river for weeks during the high summer tourist season to make repairs to the dams. Quote, that doesn't happen anymore, end quote, Peisel said. He too serves on the Rio Grande Basin Roundtable, which also approved some grants for the project. Quote, I voted for the project knowing it would have environmental benefits, and it did, Peisel said, because there is no need for the irrigators to dry up the river to repair a failing dam anymore. Still, he said, if environmental promises are being made publicly, the state needs a better way to make sure they are kept. Trouts Unlimited's Terry said for years he was hopeful that the rehabilitated dam would serve as another multi-use storage project in the water-short valley, helping farmers and the environment. Quote, "We are so disappointed in the delivery of what was promised and the lack of the CWCB holding the irrigation district accountable in any way," end quote, he said. Altering the dam's new equipment so that winter releases can occur will likely require spending about $5 million, according to Terry. Peisel and others hope a resolution between the farmers and the environmentalists can occur without legal action. Quote, "We don't want to start thumping each other in the chest," end quote, Peisel said. Quote, "That's the way it was in the old days. It was not fun," end quote. By Gerd Smith. In the news, Colorado councilman cried, quote, "My gun went off," end quote, after shooting a teen looking for homecoming photo spot, deputy says. The 17-year-old was shot along a road in Conifer after he and a friend said they hopped a fence to ask the homeowner if they could take photos by a lake and a dock. By Jennifer Brown. A town councilman who shot a 17-year-old boy in the face as the teen was scouting for a scenic spot to take homecoming photos exclaimed, quote, "My gun went off," end quote, after he stepped out of his truck and pulled a handgun from its holster, according to court records. Brent Metz, 38, who was on the council for the tiny town of Mountain View, pointed his gun at the two teenagers, but might not have intended to pull the trigger, according to an arrest affidavit written by a Jefferson County sheriff's deputy. The teenager, who had wounds to his mouth and nose and was bleeding profusely, told the deputy that he didn't think Metz meant to shoot him. The boy said he didn't see the gun, but heard the shot and then realized he was bleeding. Quote, "I was going to die," end quote, said the teen, who remains hospitalized after the Tuesday shooting in Conifer. The teen's friend, who was in the passenger seat of the victim's Audi S4, saw Metz pull his gun from the holster and pointed at them. He ducked down. Then he heard the windshield shatter and heard Metz say, quote, "Oh shit, my gun went off," end quote. The friend then jumped out of the car, ran to the driver's side and pulled off his T-shirt so he could use it to apply pressure and try and stop the bleeding. Metz, the boy said, tried to help, but the boy pushed him away and asked, quote, why he shot his friend, end quote, according to the affidavit. One of the teens picked up the other at Dakota Ridge High School near Littleton on Tuesday afternoon. The longtime friends left school with a mission to find a picturesque site for homecoming photos, beginning in Ken Carl Valley and then going up Deer Creek Canyon. When they spotted the home on Pleasant Park Road with a lake and a dock, they decided to hop the fence and ask the homeowner for permission to return the night of the homecoming dance to take photos. The boys walked up a long driveway and knocked on the front door, but there was no answer, according to the affidavit. They told deputies they then went back to their car, which was parked along the road, and pulled out a school binder to start writing a note that they planned to leave for the homeowner. That's when Metz arrived in his truck. He pulled in at an angle, blocking the Audi from pulling away, according to the court document. Metz's girlfriend had seen the two teens on the property via a home security system and had called the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. She also called Metz, who beat deputies to the property. Metz was arrested and booked into the Jefferson County Jail on charges of first-degree assault, felony menacing, illegal discharge of a firearm, and reckless endangerment. While standing with the teens, Metz refused to say whether he had shot the teen and instead said he needed to talk to a lawyer. But Metz told the deputy where to find the gun, which was in his trunk, according to the court document. An initial scan at the hospital revealed the teen had a bullet fragment in his head, the affidavit said. By Jennifer Brown. In arts news, a fact-checked article asked the question, did James Earl Jones ever live in Colorado? The Colorado Sun partners with Gigavac to investigate viral claims, by Justin George. And the answer to the question is yes. Award-winning actor James Earl Jones, who died September 9, 2024, at the age of 93, spent his first assignment after joining the Army at Camp Hale near Leadville in the 1950s. Jones, at the time, was a second lieutenant in the 38th Regimental Combat Team. He had recently graduated from Reserve Officer Training Corps at the University of Michigan. Assigned to Camp Hale in Leadville in the early 1950s, Jones established a cold weather training command. He received an honorable discharge as a first lieutenant and moved to New York City to study acting. He worked as a janitor to support himself. Jones debuted on Broadway in 1957, performing in Shakespeare plays including Othello, Hamlet, and King Lear. Jones went on to star in several movies and is famously known as the voice of Darth Vader in the original Star Wars trilogy and of Mufasa in the Disney's Lion King. By Justin George. In environmental news, Colorado's mining towns' polluted legacy has a potential for profit, but some are wary of the risk. Backers say the Leadville proposal would speed cleanup work that's taken decades under federal oversight with no foreseeable end. By the Associated Press. By Matthew Brown, Brittany Peterson, and Thomas Priepert. Leadville. Rust-colored piles of mine waste and sun-bleached wooden derricks loom above the historic Colorado mountain town of Leadville, a legacy of gold and silver mines polluting the Arkansas River basin more than a century after the city's boomsday. Enter a fledgling company called CJK Milling that wants to, quote, remine, end quote, some of the waste piles to squeeze more gold from ore discarded decades ago when it was less valuable. The waste would be trucked to a nearby mill, crushed to a powder, and bathed in cyanide to extract trace amounts of precious metals. The proposal comes amid surging global interest in reprocessing waste containing discarded minerals that have grown more valuable over time and can now be more readily removed. These include precious metals and minerals used for renewable energy that many countries, including the United States, are scrambling to secure. Backers say the Leadville proposal would speed cleanup work that's taken decades under federal oversight with no foreseeable end. They speak in aspirational tones of a, quote, circular economy, end quote, for mining where leftovers get repurposed. Yet for some residents and officials, reviving the city's depressed mining industry and stirring up waste piles harkens to a polluted past when the Arkansas was harmful to fish and at times ran red with waste from Leadville mines. Quote, we're sitting in a river that 20 years ago fish couldn't survive, end quote, Bryce Karsh, who owns a fishing ranch downstream of the proposed mill, said as he threw fish pellets into the pool teeming with rainbow trout. Quote, why go backwards? Why risk it? End quote. Leadville, home to 2,600 people and the National Mining Museum, bills itself as America's highest city at 10,119 feet above sea level. That distinction helped the city forge a new identity as a mecca for extreme athletes. Endurance race courses loop through nearby hills where millions of tons of discarded mine waste leached lead, arsenic, zinc, and other toxic metals into waterways. The driving force behind CJK Milling is Nick Michael, a 38-year-old mining veteran who characterizes the project as a way to give back to society. Standing atop a heap of mining waste with Colorado's highest summit, Mount Elbert, in the distance, Michael says the rubble has a higher concentration of gold than many large mines now operating across the U.S. Quote, in the old days, that wasn't the case, end quote, he said. Quote, but the tables have turned, and that's what makes this economic. We're just cleaning up these small piles and moving on to the next one, end quote. City Council member Christian Luna Leal grew up in Leadville in a trailer park with poor water quality after his parents immigrated from Mexico. Disadvantaged communities have always borne the brunt of the industry's problems, he said, dating to Leadville's early days when mine owners poorly treated Irish immigrants who did much of the work. Almost 1,300 immigrants, mostly Irish, are buried in paupers' graves in a local cemetery. Stirring up old mine waste could reverse decades of cleanup, Luna Leal said, again fouling water and threatening the welfare of residents, including Latinos, many living in mobile homes on the town's outskirts. Quote, there is a genuine fear by a lot of our community that this is not properly being addressed and our concerns are not being taken as seriously as they should be, Luna Leal said. The company's process doesn't get rid of the mine waste. For every ton of ore milled, a ton of waste would remain, minus a few ounces of gold. At 400 tons a day, waste will stack up very quickly. CJK originally planned to use a giant open pit to store the material in a wet slurry. After that was rejected, the company will instead dry waste to putty-like consistency and pile it on a hill behind the mill, Michael said. The open pit downslope would act as an emergency catchment if the pile collapsed. The magnitude of mining waste globally is staggering, with tens of thousands of tailings piles containing 245 billion tons, researchers say. and waste generation is increasing as companies build larger mills with lower grades of ore, resulting in greater ratio of waste to product, according to the nonprofit World Mind Tailings Failures. This month, gold prices reached record highs, and demand has grown sharply for critical minerals such as lithium used in batteries. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us for the Colorado Sun. Read by Liz.
If you enjoyed this program, please register for our free services at www.aftersight.org or by calling 303-786-7777.